sweat on your neck, and in the corner sits a little box, a cheap cooler, the kind we sell along the back roads for about $150. Now watch what happens when you bury one pipe in the ground behind that box. That little cooler stops being a fan. It turns into a true geothermal cooling unit. The kind the outside world pays $20, $30, $40,000 to put in for the price of a Saturday and a spool of pipe. Here is the bold part. The ground under your feet, just a few feet down, sits at about 52 degrees all summer long, every single day. It does not care that it is 95 degrees above it, and if you can move that cold up into your house, you can cool a room for the cost of running a small fan, pennies a day. We have done this for generations, not with machines, with springhouses, with stone, with cold water, moving slow. The knowledge survived with us because we never stopped needing it. Out there, they forgot it on purpose because there is no money in selling you the ground you already own. Stay with me because the real secret is at the end. It comes straight out of the old Pennsylvania Dutch springhouses my grandfather built, the kind they recorded in county farm ledgers back in the late 1800s. And it works on a house you already live in. Not a new build, the one you are sitting in right now. I remember being maybe 7 years old, down in my grandfather's spring house in Lancaster County. In the deep heat of August, the air outside shimmered, but inside, on those wet flat stones, the water ran so cold it numbed my fingers in about 10 seconds. There were crocks of cream sitting in it. The smell was cold stone and milk, and not one wire ran into that little building. Not one. That memory is the whole video. Hold on to it, because here is what nobody told you. The thing they call air conditioning, the thing that eats your electric bill alive every summer, is mostly just a way to move heat from inside to outside. That is all it does. It is a heat pump, a pump that pushes heat out of your house, and to do that, it fights. It fights the hot air outside. On a 95-degree afternoon, your window unit is trying to dump your kitchen's heat into air that is already roasting. It is like trying to pour a bucket of water into a creek that is already overflowing. It works, but it grunts and groans and burns electricity the whole time. Let me put real numbers on the pain. A regular window air conditioner pulls somewhere between 500 and 1500 watts when the compressor is running. A central air system for a whole house can pull 3,000 to 5,000 watts. Run that through a hot July and August, and a lot of families out there are paying $200, $300, even $400 a month just to not be miserable. And it never ends. That money is gone. Every year it comes back around. Every year it goes up. You do not own anything at the end of it. You just rented some cool air for a few months, and then you pay again. I have watched neighbors, good plain folks and English folks alike, sweat through the night because they were scared to turn the unit on, scared of the bill, sleeping on top of the covers with a wet rag on their forehead. In a country this rich, that is the part that gets me. And the worst of it is the lie underneath it all. The lie that you need a big expensive machine to be cool, that you have to buy comfort from a company every single month for the rest of your life. You do not. You never did. Because that fight your air conditioner is fighting, it is a fight you can skip entirely. Here is the turn. Here is where it gets good. You do not have to dump your heat into the hot air. The hot air is the worst place to dump it. There is a far better place, and it is right under your boots. Go down into the earth, not far, 6 to 8 feet down, below what we call the frost line. The ground stops caring about the weather. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. It holds steady at roughly the average yearly temperature of wherever you live. In most of Amish country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, that comes out to about 50 to 55 degrees. Call it 52. Think about that. While it is 95 up top, it is 52 down below. That cold is just sitting there, free, waiting. It has been waiting your whole life. So instead of fighting the hot air, you give your heat to the cool ground. The ground is enormous. It is the biggest heat sink on the planet. You will never fill it up. You could run cooling into that earth for 1,000 years and it would shrug. Now, here is how you actually do it with that little $150 cooler box. And I promise, this is simpler than you think. You take a long loop of pipe, plain black polyethylene pipe, the kind they sell for water lines, 3/4 of an inch across. You bury it in a trench about 6 feet down, and you run a good long stretch of it. 200 to 300 feet works for a room. You loop it back and forth in the trench like a folded ribbon so it all fits. Then you fill that pipe with plain water and you connect both ends back up to the surface. You put a small pump on it, a little circulator pump, the kind they use in hot water heating, pulls maybe 40 to 60 watts, less power than an old light bulb. That pump pushes the water down through the buried pipe, down where it is 52 degrees. The water rolls slow through that cold earth and it gives up all its heat to the ground. It comes back up to the surface cold. Cold as that spring house water on my fingers. And then you run that cold water through a radiator, a simple coil of fins, like the one in front of an old car radiator, or a heater core, you can pull from a junkyard for $15, $20. You set that coil right inside or behind your little cooler box. The fan in the box blows your hot room air across the cold coil. The air gives up its heat to the cold water, and what comes out the front of that box is cold, dry, clean air. The water carries the heat back down into the ground. Round and round it goes. A closed loop, nothing used up, nothing burned, just a small fan and a small pump. That is geothermal cooling. That is the same principle in those $40,000 systems. You just built the heart of it for a few $100s and a weekend with a shovel. But here's the question that should be nagging at you right now. If it is this simple, this cheap, this old, why is almost nobody doing it? Why did you have to find a fellow like me on a screen to even hear about it? Hold that question, because the answer is not pretty, and we will get to it. And if you want all of this laid out in one place, the loops, the coils, the cold sources, the sizing, the old springhouse logic made practical for the home you already own, I put it into a book. It is called The Home Energy Blueprint, and it covers this ground cooling system along with the other old way energy methods we have preserved and made usable for the house you are already living in. There is also the Off-Grid Home Blueprint and the Complete Home Energy Field Edition if you want the whole picture. Any of them will run you $97, and you can find them linked in the description below. One Saturday of savings from this system, and it has already paid for itself twice over. But now let me show you why this works so well, because I do not want you taking my word for it. I want you to understand it in your bones. The cooling power here comes from two things: the temperature difference and the time the water spends in the ground. Your room is maybe 78 degrees and you want it cooler. The ground is 52. That is a 26-degree gap to work with. That is plenty. A regular air conditioner makes its own cold by compressing gas, which is why it eats so much power. You are not making cold. You are borrowing it from a place that already has it for free. And the slower the water moves through that long buried pipe, the more time it has to dump its heat into the earth and come back truly cold. That is why you want a good long run of pipe and a gentle little pump, not a roaring one. Slow and cold beats fast and lukewarm every time. This is exactly, and I mean exactly, what the old spring house did. My grandfather did not build that thing by accident. The Pennsylvania Dutch laid those spring houses over a flowing spring on purpose because spring water comes up out of the ground already at that 50-something degrees. They ran it through a stone trough and set the milk and butter and meat right in the cold flow. That building was a refrigerator and an air conditioner with no moving parts and no power in 17 and 1800 something. You can read about them in the old county farm records, the property surveys, the barn and spring house listings. They were so normal, nobody thought to brag about them. We just kept doing it. The world out there got dazzled by the electric machine and threw the old way in the ditch. Now, let me guess what you are thinking. You are thinking, that is fine for a fellow with a fresh field and a backhoe. But I have got an old house, built in the 1960s, or the 1940s, or older, a finished yard, maybe a small lot. This new build geothermal stuff is not for me. Stop right there, because this is the part I most want you to hear, and it is the part the big companies absolutely do not want you to know. This works on the home you already own, better than you would believe. And you can start this weekend with a shovel, with no permit for the simple version, and without one single contractor setting foot on your land. Let me give you the easiest version first, the one anybody can do. You do not need to trench your whole yard. You can start with what is called a single pit ground loop. You dig one hole, just one, about 8 feet deep and a few feet across. A strong man with a post hole digger and a shovel and a free Saturday can do it. Down in that hole, you coil a few hundred feet of that black poly pipe round and round like a spring, packed into the bottom where it is coolest. Then you backfill it, tamp it down good, and you bring the 2 pipe ends up out of the ground near your house. That is your whole ground side. One hole, hidden. Grass grows back over it in a month and you would never know it was there. From there, you run the 2 pipe ends into your basement or through a window or a wall, over to your little cooler box with the radiator coil in it, hook up the little pump, fill it with water, flip it on. In an old farmhouse with thick walls, one of these can take the bite right out of a bedroom or a sitting room. Enough to sleep cool, enough to stop running the big unit half the day. And here is a technique you can do this very weekend, even before you dig anything. If you have an old hand-dug well, or a drilled well, or even a sump pit that fills with groundwater, you already have cold down there. I will tell you exactly how to use that in a minute, because that is the heart of the secret I promised you. But understand the principle now. The cold is already on your property. You are not building cold, you are just reaching down and pulling it up. People with old homes think they got the short end. The truth is the opposite. Old homes were built back when folks still understood the ground. Old houses sit on hand-dug wells, over springs, near creeks, with deep stone basements that stay cool all summer on their own. You have got more to work with than the man in the brand new vinyl house on a scraped flat lot. You just never knew what you were sitting on. So why, then, why is this not in every home in America? Why did the comfort of 52-degree ground get traded for a $400 electric bill? Now we get to the part that makes my jaw tighten. Somebody profited from you not knowing this. Think it through. There is no money in the ground. The earth does not send anybody a bill. If your cooling comes from a hole in your own yard and a 40-watt pump, then the power company sells you almost nothing in July. The big heating and cooling company sells you no $12,000 unit. No service plan, no yearly tune-up, no replacement in 10 years when the compressor dies. A simple ground loop made of pipe that costs maybe $150 to $300 that lasts 50 years, buried in the dirt with no moving parts to break, is a nightmare for an industry built on you paying forever. It is a thing you buy once and then forget about while it quietly saves you money for the rest of your life. So which one do you think got the advertising? The shiny machine that needs you every month, or the hole in the ground that needs you never again? That is not a conspiracy with a secret meeting. It is simpler and colder than that. It is just money flowing the way money flows. The thing that keeps you dependent gets pushed. The thing that makes you free gets forgotten. And after a generation or two, everybody just assumes the forgotten thing must not work, or it would be everywhere. It works. It has always worked. We never stopped using it because we never let ourselves get dependent in the first place. That is the whole Amish way if you boil it down. Do not let yourself need something you cannot fix, fund, or replace with your own 2 hands. But it gets a layer deeper, and this is where the same folks who sold you the machine also shaped the world around the machine. Once everybody was sold on compressor cooling, the whole house got designed around it. New homes got built, sealed up tight with small windows and low ceilings because the machine would handle the air. Builders quit putting in springhouses and root cellars and cross breezes and deep porches and shade trees on the south side. Why bother when you can just sell a bigger unit? The old wisdom of building a house that stays cool on its own, that got designed right out. And then, later, the rules followed the machines. I will be careful here, because I want to be straight with you. In a lot of places now, the modern building rules and the way permits get handled lean hard toward the standard equipment, the standard contractor, the standard expensive way. Try to do something simple and old and sensible, and you can run into a wall of paperwork that exists, partly because the people who sell the expensive way had a hand in writing the standards. That is not me crying boogeyman. That is just how industries protect their patch. The good news, the part that should make you smile, is that the simple ground loop and a cooler box in your own home is about the most quiet, harmless, nobody's business project there is. You are circulating plain water through a pipe in your own dirt and blowing a fan across a cold coil for your own comfort in your own home. The basic version is something a great many folks do as a plain old DIY project. Always be neighborly and check your own local situation, but understand what you are actually doing. You are recovering something that was always yours. Now, let me earn the time you have given me. Let me give you the real secret, the finale, the thing that turns this from a clever weekend project into something that will genuinely change a hot house. This comes straight out of the spring house, straight out of my grandfather's cold stone room, and the way the old Lancaster County farms were laid out, the way you can still see in the old property records where the spring and the spring house and the house all sat in a line for a reason. Here it is. The big slow weakness of a buried pipe loop is that the dry dirt around the pipe can only carry heat away so fast. Pack a loop in dry soil, and after a few hours of running, the dirt right around your pipe warms up a little, and your cold water comes back not quite as cold. The earth a few feet out is still 52, but the thin skin of soil hugging your pipe got lazy. The old folks solved this without ever knowing the science of it. They did not bury their cold in dry dirt. They put it in moving water. Water carries heat about 25 times better than dry soil, and water that moves carries it away endlessly because fresh cold water keeps arriving. That is the entire genius of the spring house. The spring did not just give cold water, it gave moving cold water a never-ending river of 52 degrees that hauled the heat away as fast as the milk could give it up. So here is the secret, the thing I have never once heard an air conditioning man say out loud. Do not bury your loop in the dirt at all. Put your loop in the water you already have. If you have a well on your property, an old hand-dug one or a modern drilled one, you have a column of groundwater sitting down there at 52 degrees with more flowing in from the sides all the time. Take your coil of polypipe, your closed loop full of clean water, and lower it down into that well water. Coil it up and sink it. Now, your loop is not hugging lazy, dry dirt. It is sitting in moving, heat-hauling, endlessly cold groundwater. Your returning water comes back colder and stays colder hour after hour because the well is doing what the spring house trough did for my grandfather. That one change, water instead of dirt, can be the difference between a project that takes the edge off and a project that genuinely cools a room down into the 60s on the worst day of the year. And it costs you nothing extra. You are using a well you already own. You are using cold you already have. No well? A cistern works, a spring works, even a creek or a pond on your land works, with the loop sunk in the deep cold part. And if you truly have only dry ground to work with, then you wet it. The old market gardeners knew this too. You run a slow soaker hose over the ground above your buried loop, or you put your loop in the low wet corner of the yard where water gathers, and you turn that lazy dry dirt into the moving water heat sink that makes the whole thing sing. That is the finale. That is the thing they let the world forget. Cold is free, the ground is full of it, and moving water is how you carry it. The spring house knew it 200 years ago. We kept it, and now you have it. Let me walk you through the whole thing one more time, plain and in order, so you can actually go do it. Because knowing it and doing it are two different things, and I want you to do it. Start with your cold source, best to worst, a well, a spring, or a cistern where you can sink the loop in water. That is your champion. Next best, a wet low spot in the yard, or a pond, or a creek. After that, a single deep pit 8 feet down where you coil the pipe and backfill and keep the ground above it damp with a soaker hose in the hottest weeks. Any of these gets you to that magic 50-something degrees. Next, your loop by 3/4 of an inch black polyethylene water pipe. For one room, lay in 200 to 300 feet of it. It is cheap, it is tough, and it will outlive you in the ground. Coil it or trench it into your cold source. Bring both ends back to the surface near where you want the cool air. Next, your pump. A small circulator pump, the kind sold for hot water heating systems, pulling 40 to 60 watts. That is your only real running cost on the water side, and it is almost nothing. It pushes the water around the loop slow and steady. Slow is what you want. The slower it moves, the colder it comes back. Next, your coil. A heater core or a small radiator with fins, $15 to $30 at a salvage yard. The cold water runs through this coil. You mount it right inside or just behind your $150 cooler box in front of the fan. Last, your fan. That is the cooler box itself doing the one job it is good at, moving room air across the cold coil. The air hits those cold fins, drops its heat into the water, and blows back out cold and clean. The water carries that heat back to your well or your loop and dumps it into the earth, and the whole thing goes round and round. Total power draw, the pump and the fan together, somewhere around 80 to 120 watts. Compare that to a window unit at 1,000 watts or central air at 4,000. You are cooling for about 1/10 of the power, maybe less. Run the math on your own bill, and it will make you a little angry about all the summers that came before. Now let me knock down the doubts I can feel piling up in your head, because I had every one of them myself before I watched it work. You are thinking, won't the pipe in the well get slimy or foul the water? No, it is a closed loop. The water inside your pipe never touches the well water. They never mix. Your drinking water stays your drinking water. The loop just shares its cold through the wall of the pipe. You are thinking, won't it make the room damp and clammy? Actually, the opposite. When warm room air hits that cold coil, the moisture in the air condenses right out onto the fins and drips into a little pan, just like the drip off a real air conditioner. You set a tray under it and run a small hose to a drain or a bucket. The air that comes off it is cooler and drier. That is the same way the spring house stayed so crisp. You are thinking, will it freeze and burst in winter? In summer use, no. The ground is far above freezing. If you want to run it cold in deep winter for some reason, or you live where the loop's shallow parts could freeze, you put a little food-safe antifreeze in the loop, the kind they use in solar water systems. But for summer cooling, plain water is fine. You are thinking, this sounds too good. What is the catch? The catch is honest work and a little patience. You have to dig, or you have to lower a loop down a well, or you have to lay some pipe. It is a Saturday of sweat. It is not a box you plug in. That is the whole reason it got forgotten. Not because it does not work, but because it asks you to do something with your hands one time instead of paying somebody forever. For a plain man, that is not a catch. That is the best part. And you are thinking, how much can one little box really cool? Be honest with yourself about that. One of these built around $150 cooler will comfortably take a bedroom or a small sitting room and make it a place you can sleep and rest, even on a brutal day. Scale it up, a bigger coil, a longer loop, a stronger fan, more of them, and you can carry a whole small house. The old spring houses cooled a building with no fan at all. With a fan and a good cold source, you have more power than my grandfather ever had, and his butter stayed hard through August. Here is what I want you to really sit with before I let you go. The cold under your house has been there the whole time. Every single sweltering summer you have ever paid through. Every month you flinched at the electric bill. Every night you lay awake too hot to sleep. That 52-degree ground was sitting right under your feet, patient, free, asking nothing. You just did not know how to reach down and take it. That is not your fault. They made very sure you would not know. There is no commercial for the dirt in your yard. There is no salesman for a hole and a length of pipe. The quiet, cheap, lasting things do not get a voice in a world that runs on selling you the same comfort over and over. But you have got the voice now. You heard it from a fellow whose grandfather kept the cream cold with nothing but a spring and some stone in a little building with not one wire running into it. You just got back something that was quietly taken from you. The simple truth that you do not have to rent your comfort from anyone, that the ground you stand on is already working for you if you will only let it. If you are the kind of person who has always felt in your gut that you are being kept dependent on purpose, that comfort and warmth and a cool night's sleep should not be a monthly toll you pay to a company forever, then you are exactly the kind of person this old knowledge was kept alive for. You belong with the folks who would rather dig one hole than pay one more bill. So here is what I want you to do. Tell me one thing in the comments. What is your cold source? Do you have an old hand-dug well out back? A spring on the property? A creek at the bottom of the field? Or just plain dry yard you would have to wet down? Tell me what you have got to work with, and I will tell you the best way to use it. Comment it now before you click away, because I read them and I answer. And if you want more of this, the old ways, the outside world threw in the ditch, the building tricks and the cold tricks and the heat tricks our people never let die, then come along with us. Subscribe and stand with the folks who are pulling this lost knowledge back up out of the ground one piece at a time, because next I am going to show you how the same spring house idea runs backwards in the winter, how that same 52-degree ground that cools your house in July can heat it in January for almost nothing, using a trick the old folks knew about the warm breath of the earth that I have never once heard explained out loud. That one is going to surprise even the people who think they know this stuff. Do not miss it. That little earth loop conversion you just watched, that was just the overview. Inside the Old Ways workshop, I pick up right where this video stopped, walking you through the full build. And if you get stuck, you ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. Not a robot. Me. You won't be alone. Either you'll belong here with builders like you. I'm Eli. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen and cancel anytime, one click. Now, what if I told you that you could keep your home cool this summer without running that air conditioner at all? In the next video, the Amish show you a simple underground pipe you can build in one weekend. It's starting right here.